You're 24 years old, sitting in a bar with your friends when she walks over. Not a girl your age fumbling with her phone, looking nervously around the room. A woman, 38, maybe 40, confident, direct. She sits down next to you like she owns the space, orders a drink without looking at the menu, and asks you a question that catches you completely off guard. Within 20 minutes, she's got you laughing, feeling seen in ways the girls your age never made you feel, wondering how you got this lucky. She doesn't play games. She texts back immediately. She knows what she wants. She makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. 3 months later, you're in her apartment more than your own. 6 months later, your friends are asking if you're okay, and you're getting defensive because they just don't understand the connection. 1 year later, you're checking your phone every 10 minutes to make sure she's not upset, declining invitations because she doesn't like your friends, absorbing her opinions as your own. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel something's wrong, but you can't articulate what. 2 years later, it's over, and you're sitting alone wondering what the hell just happened to you. If that story sounds familiar, if you've lived some version of it, or watched a friend disappear into it, or felt that first intoxicating pull from a woman whose age seemed like sophistication rather than a warning sign. And you need to hear what I'm about to tell you, because there's a pattern happening in the dating world that nobody's talking about honestly, and it's not about what you think it's about. There's a quiet migration happening, and most people haven't noticed it yet. Women over 35 pursuing men in their 20s. Not occasionally. Not as random incidents. As a pattern. You see it in the bars where conversations feel rehearsed. In the dating apps where age preferences tell stories people won't say out loud. In the restaurants where the age gap sits across the table like an unspoken agreement nobody's supposed to question. And here's what you've been told about it. It's about physical attraction. Women are embracing their sexuality. Age is just a number. Consenting adults making their own choices. And sure, on the surface, that's part of it. But there's another reason, a deeper one. A reason that women themselves don't always consciously recognize, but their actions betray with brutal clarity. Let me be real with you. Women over 35 aren't chasing younger men because younger men are more attractive. They're chasing younger men because younger men are easier to control. And once you understand the psychology beneath this dynamic, you'll never look at these relationships the same way again. A woman at 25 dates men her age or older because she's exploring. She's testing boundaries, discovering what she wants, riding the wave of options that youth provides. She has leverage. She has time. She has the gravitational pull of potential wrapped around her like armor. But something shifts after 35. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But gradually, like a foundation crumbling brick by brick, the dynamics change. The options narrow, the leverage shifts, and the men her age, the ones who spent their 20s and early 30s building careers, developing emotional intelligence, learning hard lessons about relationships. Those men aren't as easy to manipulate anymore. They've been through the fire. They've had their hearts broken, their trust shattered, their illusions dismantled. They've learned to spot red flags before they're even fully raised. They've developed boundaries that can't be crossed with tears or tactics. They know the difference between connection and performance, between genuine interest and strategic affection. They ask uncomfortable questions. Why did your last 3 relationships end? Why don't you have any long-term friendships with other women? Why does every story about your exes position them as the villain? They notice when her story keeps changing. They recognize emotional manipulation because they've experienced it before. They have friends who can provide perspective, who might even know her or know of her, who can fill in the gaps she conveniently leaves out. And that accountability, that ability to see through the performance, that's the problem. Because a woman who's used to operating from a position of power, who spent years having men chase her, compete for her, bend themselves into shapes to please her, She doesn't adapt well when that power begins to fade. She doesn't suddenly develop different relationship skills. She doesn't magically become more emotionally mature or self-aware. Instead, she looks for a different market, a market where her age still grants her advantage, where her experience can be reframed as sophistication, where her past can remain conveniently hidden behind the naivety of someone who doesn't know the right questions to ask yet. She pursues younger men, not because they're her equals, because they're not. Here's what men don't realize, especially younger men who suddenly find themselves noticed by women they thought were out of their league. She's not choosing randomly. She's not dating younger men as a category. She's selecting specific types. Men who are kind but uncertain, ambitious but insecure, intelligent but inexperienced. Men whose good qualities make them vulnerable to someone who knows how to exploit empathy as weakness, who can twist kindness into obligation, who can make inexperience feel like inadequacy that only she can fix. She doesn't choose the 25-year-old who has clear boundaries and a strong support system and the confidence to walk away from dysfunction. That man can't be controlled. She chooses the 25-year-old who's still figuring himself out, still seeking validation, still willing to believe that someone older seeing his potential means he needs to change himself to reach it. And here's the darkest part of the selection process. She's not just seeking someone she can control. She's seeking someone who doesn't know her history, someone who can't judge her past mistakes, someone who sees her as she wishes she were rather than as she actually is. Think about it. A woman at 38 who pursues men her own age faces immediate accountability. Those men have also lived through their 30s. They understand what a person's relationship history reveals. They know that someone who has left a trail of broken relationships, who speaks about every ex with bitterness, who has never taken responsibility for a single failed connection. They know that's not bad luck. That's a pattern. But a 24-year-old? He doesn't have that framework yet. He doesn't have the experience to recognize that her charm, offensive in the beginning, is drastically different from her emotional unavailability 3 months in. He doesn't understand that love bombing isn't passion, it's a tactic. He doesn't realize that her stories about crazy exes and misunderstood relationships are preview clips of what she'll say about him when this ends. She can rewrite her entire history for him. She can be whoever she wants to be in his eyes because he has no way to verify the truth. The younger man isn't chosen for who he is, he's chosen for what he doesn't know. Let me paint you a picture of how this unfolds, because once you know the pattern, you'll see it everywhere. She meets him in a context where her age reads as an asset rather than a liability. Maybe it's through work, where she has a position of authority. Maybe it's at a social gathering where she's friends with his friends, positioned as the cool older woman who isn't uptight. Maybe it's online where she can curate her presentation carefully. The beginning is a masterclass in strategic attraction. She's attentive in ways women his age aren't. She texts back immediately. She makes him feel prioritized. She's sexually confident, taking the lead in ways that make him feel desired rather than pressured. She laughs at his jokes. She seems fascinated by his perspectives. She treats him like an equal, while simultaneously making subtle references to her greater experience that position her as slightly above him. It's intoxicating. He feels like he's finally being seen, like he's finally found someone who appreciates his depth, like he's finally in an adult relationship instead of the immature games women his age play. What he doesn't realize is that what feels like equality is actually hierarchy being carefully disguised. What feels like sophistication is actually manipulation so refined it looks like wisdom. What feels like being chosen is actually being targeted. And by the time he realizes the difference, he's already entangled. Months 0 to 3, the honeymoon. Everything feels perfect. She's everything he thought he wanted. Present, attentive, sexually confident, emotionally available. He introduces her to his friends, though she always seems to have excuses when he wants to meet hers. He's talking about future plans, though she keeps things vague in a way that seems mature rather than evasive. He feels lucky. Months 3 to 6. The shift. Small cracks appear. She becomes critical of things that didn't bother her before. how he dresses, how he spends money, how he spends his time, the criticism is always framed as helpful. I just want the best for you. I see your potential and I want you to reach it. Women your age wouldn't push you to be better like I do. She starts comparing him to men her age, not favourably, but in ways that make him feel he needs to prove himself. She pulls back emotionally when he doesn't meet expectations she never clearly communicated. He doesn't recognise these as red flags. He sees them as areas where he needs to improve to be worthy of her. Months 6 to 12. The isolation. His friends start noticing something's wrong. He's different. He checks his phone constantly. He declines invitations because she doesn't like his friends. He's absorbed her opinions as his own. They try to say something gently, carefully. He gets defensive. She told him this would happen. She warned him that people wouldn't understand their connection, that they'd be jealous, that they'd try to come between them. He chooses her over them. That's what the isolation phase requires. She becomes the center of his world, not because she's adding to his life, but because she's systematically removing everything else from it. Months 12 to 18. The collapse. He's starting to feel something's wrong, but he can't articulate what. She's wonderful one day, distant the next with no pattern he can predict. He works harder to please her. He ignores the voice in his head saying this doesn't feel right. He's invested so much, emotionally, socially, temporally. Walking away would mean admitting he was wrong, admitting his friends were right, admitting he wasted the best years of his 20s on someone who was using him. So he stays, until he can't anymore, until the cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable, until something happens that makes the dysfunction impossible to ignore. And when it finally ends, when he finally leaves or she discards him for a newer, younger model, he's left with a storage room of wounds he doesn't know how to process, because nobody talks about this dynamic honestly. Nobody warns young men that some older women are predators in progressive clothing, that power imbalances don't stop being toxic just because society approves of the gender configuration. So what's really driving this? What's the core wound that makes a woman over 35 seek out these imbalanced relationships, instead of doing the actual work of becoming someone capable of healthy partnership with equals? Fear. Not fear of aging, though that's part of it. Not fear of being alone, though that plays a role too. But fear of being truly seen. Fear of being known completely and found wanting. Fear that if someone has the experience and wisdom to recognize her patterns, they'll reject her before she has a chance to lock them down. It's the same fear that drives any manipulative behavior. The terror that authentic connection requires authentic vulnerability. And authentic vulnerability means someone might see all of you and decide you're not worth staying for. So instead of facing that fear, instead of developing into someone who can handle being fully known, she finds people who don't have the tools to fully know her yet. She mistakes their naivety for acceptance. She confuses their inability to see her dysfunction with their unconditional love. And she tells herself it's real. She tells herself this younger man is special, is different, is mature beyond his years. She tells herself they have a connection that transcends age, that defies convention, that other people simply can't understand. But deep down, in the hours when she's alone and the performance drops, she knows the truth. She knows she's running. She knows she's hiding. She knows that if she dated a man her age with equivalent life experience, she'd be forced to confront all the work she hasn't done, all the growth she hasn't achieved, all the patterns she keeps repeating while claiming each time is different. The younger man isn't a partner. He's a mirror that hasn't learned to reflect clearly yet. Now here's why this pattern is accelerating instead of decreasing. Society has created a narrative that makes this dynamic nearly impossible to criticize honestly. If you point out that a 40-year-old woman dating a 24-year-old man might have problematic motivations, you're called a sexist, a hypocrite, someone who's bitter about women having sexual freedom. The conversation gets shut down before it can examine the reality beneath the progressive surface. And that protection, that social shield, enables the pattern to continue unchecked. Women who wouldn't be able to sustain these dynamics with peers can now operate freely, with younger men because cultural narratives about empowerment and age gap acceptance provide cover for what is essentially predatory behaviour. They can frame their pursuit of much younger men as sexually liberated, as modern, as breaking down outdated social conventions, while the actual mechanics of the relationship mirror every abusive power dynamic that would be immediately recognised if the genders were reversed. A 42-year-old man isolating a 25-year-old woman from her friends, controlling how she spends her time, criticising her life choices, using his greater experience to position himself as the authority in all decisions. Everyone would recognise that as toxic, textbook manipulation. But when the genders flip, suddenly it's empowering. Suddenly it's a mature woman helping a young man grow up. Suddenly anyone who questions it is judging her unfairly. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, and it creates an environment where the pattern repeats endlessly because the women engaging in it face zero social consequences, and the young men damaged by it have no cultural framework to even name what happened to them. Here's what nobody tells you about the long-term damage these relationships cause. Years later, when he's finally extricated himself, when he's 30, 32, 35, he's still carrying the imprint. He struggles with women his age because they seem immature compared to her manufactured sophistication. He has difficulty trusting his own judgment because hers was always positioned as superior. He confuses intensity with intimacy because that's what she taught him love feels like. He seeks relationships that replicate that consuming quality, that all or nothing energy, not realizing he's seeking dysfunction disguised as depth. He compares every woman to her, not recognizing that what seemed like maturity was actually manipulation so refined it looked like wisdom. She didn't ruin him. Men are more resilient than that. But she set him back. She planted seeds of doubt about his own instincts that take years to uproot. She modeled relationship dynamics that he has to unlearn before he can build something healthy. She took years from him that he can't get back. Years when he should have been learning healthy relationship dynamics with someone at his developmental stage. Years when he should have been building friendships, exploring himself, making mistakes with people who were making the same mistakes at the same time. Instead, he spent them in a relationship where every fight was framed as his immaturity. Every boundary he tried to set was painted as his inability to handle a real woman. Every moment of doubt was positioned as his own insecurity rather than his instincts correctly identifying something wrong. And somewhere she's already moved on to someone younger, someone newer, someone who doesn't know her history yet. The pattern continues because she never faces the consequences long enough to change. She just finds a new mirror that doesn't reflect clearly yet. So if you're a younger man reading this, if you're seeing yourself in these patterns, if you've felt that intoxicating pull from a woman whose age seemed like sophistication rather than a warning sign, here's what you need to understand. You are not lucky to have an older woman's attention. You are not mature for your age just because someone mature in years tells you that. You are not learning what real relationships look like from someone who can't maintain them with people her own age. You're being targeted because your inexperience makes you controllable. Your youth makes you grateful for what older men would recognize as problematic. Your lack of reference points makes you accept dynamics that experienced men would immediately walk away from. And the moment you start developing those reference points, the moment you start recognizing the patterns, the moment you start establishing boundaries based on your growing awareness, she'll either escalate the control tactics or discard you for a newer model who doesn't question yet. That's not love. That's not growth. That's not a relationship worth your precious years. Here's how you recognize it before you're too deep. Be red flag 1. She moves fast. Love bombing in the first weeks. Intense connection that feels too good to be true. It is. Red flag 2. She has no long-term friendships, no women from her past, no one who's known her for years. Everyone's either new or gone. Red flag 3. Every ex is crazy, toxic, or didn't understand her. If everyone in her past is the problem, she's the problem. Red flag 4. She isolates you slowly. Your friends don't get it. Your family's concerns are dismissed. Soon, it's just the two of you against the world. Red flag 5. She uses her age as authority. I know better. When you're my age, you'll understand. Trust me, I've been through this. Experience isn't wisdom if it's just repeated mistakes. Red flag 6. Your intuition is screaming, but you can't explain why. That's not insecurity. That's your nervous system recognizing danger your mind hasn't articulated yet. Walk away. Not later. Not after one more conversation. Not after giving her a chance to explain. Now. Because every day you stay is a day you're letting someone rewrite your understanding of what healthy love looks like. Here's the final truth, the one that changes everything once you truly absorb it. Healthy relationships, regardless of age gaps, are built on mutual respect between equals. They don't require isolation from peer support. They don't involve one person constantly deferring to another's supposed superior wisdom. They don't make you feel grateful to be chosen, rather than confident in your choice. If the relationship requires you to disconnect from everyone who might question it, that's not love. That's control. If the relationship positions her as the teacher and you as the student in perpetuity, that's not partnership. That's hierarchy. If the relationship makes you feel lucky to have her attention rather than certain of your own worth, that's not connection. That's manipulation. The age gap isn't automatically the problem. The power dynamic is. And women who deliberately seek out significantly younger men aren't seeking connection. They're seeking control they can't achieve with peers who would see through them. They're seeking absolution from someone who doesn't know their history. They're seeking mirrors that haven't learned to reflect clearly yet. You deserve better than being someone's ego maintenance project. You deserve better than being chosen for what you don't know, rather than who you are. You deserve better than being the latest in a long line of younger men who learned this lesson the hard way. Walk away. Heal. Date people at your stage of life who are learning alongside you, making mistakes alongside you, growing alongside you. Build relationships where power flows equally, where neither person wields age or experience as a weapon, where both people are choosing each other freely without power, imbalances clouding the choice. Because once you truly understand your worth, once you recognize that inexperience doesn't mean inadequacy, once you see that real maturity means seeking equals rather than subordinates, predatory age gap relationships lose their appeal entirely. You become untouchable, not because you're closed off, but because you're grounded in a way that makes manipulation impossible. You know what healthy looks like. You know what your boundaries are. You know that being alone is infinitely better than being slowly eroded by someone who treats your youth as an opportunity to avoid their own accountability. That's not bitter. That's not cynical. That's wisdom. And wisdom, real wisdom, is what protects you from ever falling into this trap again. Remember it. Share it. Save a younger brother from learning this truth too late.